Good morning. Good morning. If ever I can ask everybody to take your seat, we're going to get started. We got a lot to cover. If I could ask people to grab their seats. Good morning, everybody. My name is Richard Joy. I'm the Executive Director of the Urban Land Institute. For those of you who missed that, I'm Richard Joy, Executive Director of the Urban Land Institute, ULI Toronto. And it's always great to have a buzzy room. And so quieting a buzzy room is always something I have to do. In fact, that's my main role in this morning's program, is to get call to order and get out of the way quickly, because we have a very, very packed agenda. So just a few quick remarks, and I'm going to kind of accelerate through. I know there's some slides that somebody's going to advance. Thank you. So I'm gonna skip over my normal script to compress things. But first of all and foremost, I want to thank Aaron and Barrellis, our hosts this morning, for convening this important session. I think it's a landmark conversation that we're having here in this part of Canada, urban Canada. So we're thrilled to be part of it, and we just want to thank Aaron and Barrellis for hosting it. So thank you. I normally read the land acknowledgement, but again, in the interest of time, I'm not going to read it this time, because usually what people want from us is to speak to the meaning behind the land acknowledgement, especially the line, "We acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit," something I always emphasize when I read this land acknowledgement. But we want to move right into our program, which is really putting meaning to I think the land acknowledgement and the importance that we at ULI place on our work in truth and reconciliation, which is manifold. Some of you will have seen that we produced a guide to truth and reconciliation, answering the call to Action 92. We put one copy on the tables. There's additional copies at the registration table. We do a lot of education in the space of cultural competency. It's very, very important work for us, and it's only just begun. But today is, I think, important chapter. We've got just, yes, I'll thank you. Just skip. And apologies to our annual sponsors, many of whom are in the room here today. But you know who you are, and you know that we thank you regularly, and we're here because of you. So thank you. And then I think the last order of business for me is just to bring up Chief Claire Salt, and I'm just going to get speaking off script. Chief Salt, it's been a great honor for us to work with you in your term of office, and I think it's amazing the leadership that you've brought to your work that I think is really well represented in the conversation that's going to be had this morning, and just a true honor for us to be part of that, to be a platform for some of that conversation. And without any further ado, I'm going to ask you to come up and address us all. Thank you.
Miigwech, Richard, for that warm introduction. Ani Buju, Magisikwe Indigenous, Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, Dunjiba, Magisi Dodom, Mississauga and Diog. Good morning to you all. I am the Ogama Chief of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Miigwech for joining us today. And on behalf of the Mississaugas of the Credit, I extend our warmest greetings to our treaty territory. Today, of course, you are located on Treaty 13, signed by my ancestors in the British Crown in 1805. My nation has a total of 8 treaties agreed upon by my ancestors and the Crown. Some of these treaties cover what is now known as the Greater Toronto Golden Horseshoe region. I want to first express my sincere appreciation and gratitude for the work that ULI and the team have been doing in getting the message out to the development and business community on treaty rights. Reconciliation takes courage, and I appreciate your unwavering commitment to leverage the ULI platform to hold events like this one, to inform, to come together, and ultimately to provide space in a boardroom for meaningful dialogue. It's wonderful to see so many people here today and what's going to be an exceptional panel discussion. We were at capacity today because the event sold out a couple of weeks ago. Seeing the interest that exists in this region for this important topic is truly encouraging. We're honored to be hosting Mindy Wright of the Squamish Nation to our territory and appreciate the time she's given us to share the remarkable story of Sinok, the urban First Nation in Vancouver. I had a trip, I went on a trip to visit the whole project last February. And wouldn't you know it, we had a big snowstorm that day in Vancouver. So it all got canceled and we waited till the next day, hoping, the snow would go away. And wouldn't you know it, it stormed again the next day. But I have paid attention. I've watched the progress. I spent a better part of my younger years in Vancouver and have very close friends from the Squamish Nation. So, I paid attention. I want to thank Mark Klim from OP Trust for being with us to share the perspective of institutional investors, along with Jonathan Davey from Scotiabank to provide a banker's point of view. We're thrilled to see Bay Street represented today. And as the title of today's event suggests, we need you. We need you in the room. We need you informed, and we need you ready to participate. I want to extend a special thank you to Scott Smith and the entire team at Aird and Barreless for hosting us today. Out of curiosity and by the show of hands, how many people here are aware that it was illegal for a First Nation to hire their own lawyers until 1951? Were you aware of that? Yeah. Let that sink in. 1951, that wasn't that long ago. This may help you to understand the challenges we as First Nations have been overcoming for decades. Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation are fortunate to have legal wisdom and moral support of this highly dedicated group at Aird and Barreless advising us. To help frame the discussion this morning, I want to say a few things about treaty rights. Some of you in the audience know this topic well. You and your organizations have made strides in the spirit of reconciliation and have entered into agreements with MCFN as the treaty holder. And not just a box to check. I want to acknowledge the aspirations of Waterfront Toronto, Canada Lands, and Northcrest for their leadership, and to encourage you to keep pushing yourselves forward for a future driven by treaty relationships. I also want to acknowledge these companies who are engaging in genuine partnership with our business corporation, the Mississaugas of the Credit Business Corporation, we commonly call MCBC. An equitable future requires a treaty forward approach, and we're proud to have alignment with partners like Arcadis who share in this commitment and have joined us today. For those who may not be aware, treaty rights are fundamental to land use and all development that occurs upon them. And make no mistake, these rights go well beyond land acknowledgements and public art installations. Treaty rights form the legal basis that allowed non-Indigenous settlement to occur in the first place, and they continue to prevail under common law and the Constitution. My ancestors agreed upon and signed the first of our 8 treaties with the Crown in 1781. These rights give everyone in the room the security of the land titles they hold. And as I stand in the room of real estate professionals, I think you'll agree with me that this is a vital component to development. I encourage everyone to continue to educate yourselves on the history of this country, the treaties it is founded upon, and the legal and moral frameworks and obligations we have to each other. As real estate experts, you are obligated by your profession to fully understand the legal foundations that you operate under. I also want to note, during meetings in official statements with the Prime Minister last July on the Building Canada Act, Prime Minister Carney and his government stressed the importance of Indigenous consultation, participation, and partnership, and that only First Nations rights holders would be consulted. At its core, successful development is about community building, not just the community it ultimately serves, but the community of people that must be involved to make it happen and happen successfully. A community of people represented by everyone in this room. You're about to hear firsthand how Squamish Nation is leading one of the most significant and exciting development projects in this country, with one of the largest pension funds in Canada. So listen closely. You're going to hear a framework that is being used in other markets and other cities across the country, and a framework that MCFN and MCBC is pursuing vigorously throughout the greater Golden Horseshoe region. My ask this morning is simple: to respect treaty rights, meet us where we're at, envision the future with us. Our treaty defines our path forward. On behalf of Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, I extend a very warm welcome, and together we can show the world what reconciliation looks like, honoring the spirit and intent of our treaties while creating shared prosperity. Chimigwechin, welcome.
Which Chief Self, that was fantastic. So my only role right now is to hand the reins over to you, Scott, to take over from here. But Scott is a partner at Aaron Barrellis and a member of the firm's Indigenous Practice Group and Energy, Environmental Law, and Infrastructure Groups. And with that, over to you.
If we get the
And I'm gonna
panelists,
steal your chair too.
yeah, go ahead, right there. We could get the panelists to come up, and then I'll introduce you. So just come up and join me, please. We needed to come to Bay Street to have this conversation with you. We've been having the conversation about access to affordable capital for major projects for some time now. And we decided that we needed to start focusing on access to capital for First Nation-led real estate development. And I'm happy to be joined by a number of friends and colleagues on the panel. So seated to my left is Mindy White. Mindy is a CPA and a member of the Squamish Nation and the CEO of Enchikai Development Corporation, which is the economic development arm of the Squamish Nation. Mindy stepped into this role in 2022 after years of experience advising Indigenous governments and businesses across Canada. Most recently, Mindy was recognized in the BC Business 2025 Woman of the Year Awards, Community Builders category for reconciliation-focused efforts in the Sanok project, one of Canada's largest First Nation real estate developments. And to start off the panel after I'm finished introducing, we're hopefully going to have a video that if the tech works, you'll get to see the Sanok project. So this is not stuff that people are just talking about. We're now shovels in the ground, iron going up, and it's such a wonderful, beautiful project. So we're going to have a look at that. Seated to Mindy's left is Umar Raza, who is the director of the real estate group of OP Trust. So welcome. We're really excited to have you here. And you've been involved in investments, divestments, asset management, reporting, and strategic initiatives across a number of property types and geographic markets. We're really excited to hear from OP Trust about your partnership with the Squamish Nation and Enchikai. So seated to the left there is somebody I actually grew up with in Ancaster, Ontario, and grew up playing hockey together, and our families were friends. And so I'm really honored that John could join us today on the panel. So John's a member of the Lower Cayuga of Six Nations of the Grand River, Vice President of CEO Support at Scotiabank, did a lot of things before joining Scotia, and we're really happy to have you here today because we really want to hear the bank's perspective on these things, and thank you for agreeing to do this. I'm cajoling John to do a whole bunch of things now with me. And then last but not least, my friend Warren Salt, who's the CEO and president of the Mississauga the Credit Business Corporation. Warren is a member of the Mississauga the Credit First Nation with over 30 years of experience working with First Nations on development initiatives. Warren brings expertise in business, finance, and governance, and has served in leadership roles on multiple boards. So thank you, Warren, for agreeing to participate. So without further ado, I'm hoping we can now go to the video. Yeah.
There we go. Okay. There's not meant to be sound with this. So this is actually recent footage of the towers. So this is phase 1. 3 towers. It's market and residential rental. So there is an affordable component of 20% and member housing. So what we're looking at in the north is Vancouver, and then this is Sanok, which is located in the area known today as Kitsilano. In 1913, the families that lived here were forcibly removed. There were Squamish families. The BC government put them on barges and burned down the village. After over 100 years, following a successful legal battle with the government, once we were able to hire lawyers after 1951, the Squamish won its land back. Of the original 80 acres, only 10.48 acres were returned. What this project represents for Squamish is the first development within the Greater Vancouver area that actually represents our people and is bringing a village back to life, vibrancy, families, inclusivity, and acknowledging and respecting our ancestors who fought so hard to get this land back for us. And so council decided after a lengthy planning process to bring in a partner. And so following a member vote, we'll dial back. Squamish is an unceded territory, meaning we don't have treaty. So our land designation jurisdiction is under the Indian Act. So in order to undertake development, you have to go to a member vote. So that's how the process was undertaken. In 2019, there was a member vote. They voted in favor of the project. And then we started working with a partner. So I came into play in 2020 on the Anchikai board. Following that, joined as CFO and then CEO in July of 2022. Our Chief Development Officer is here today, Jennifer Primore Russell, and Jen actually started on our board. So we found our board is a great recruitment tool for the executive team. But this project is really special on many different levels. To us, it's economic reconciliation. It's the first time that we get visible presence on our lands, but also to work with partners like OP Trust and really encourage Canadians and investors and institutions to advance their own projects with First Nations. And this, I think, is an inspiring a global perspective of how to work better with tribal communities and others in different countries. So it's the start of something that I think should have been in place for centuries. Indigenous communities were prevented from participating in economic development, and there's many reasons why. There were barriers, there were challenges, there were laws put in place to prevent us from participating. So what we see now is actually what can be accomplished by working together with the federal, provincial, and municipal governments. So Sanok Phase 1, 3 towers, 1,408 rental units, really being brought at a time that Vancouver is facing a housing crisis. And we're all in real estate. We know how troubling times can be, and right now there's no exception, but this project is progressing, and we'll start welcoming the first residents on this land in over 100 years in the second quarter 2026.
So thank you for that introduction. And the buildings are quite spectacular. If you're coming to Vancouver and you're going over the Burrard or Granville Bridge, you can see them just to your left. And so nice to see Squamish returning to the ancestral village site. And so you're doing this huge development on reserve. Can you tell us a little bit about what it's like doing like very large scale because this is one of the largest like First Nation led non-major project developments in Canada. What's it like doing it on reserve?
Well, as I mentioned, it is under the Indian Act. So it does take an enormous amount of collaboration between the different levels of government to undertake this. Squamish Nation as a government has that government to relationship with the federal, provincial, and municipal governments. Enchkai is the overseer, manager of the nation's interest in the project. So we actually act as that coordinating body. We have our development team that works with nation staff, city staff, and government. So it is under the Indian Act, which means that we do have to work with Indigenous Services Canada.
Do they really function at the speed of business?
I was
Sorry.
doing a pause here because I'll just leave it there.
Okay.
But we also, this is a 100% construction financing under CMHC's RCFI program. Working with CMHC has been a pleasure. They're a great partner. They understood how to work with us, not against us, through this process. So that was quite successful, and we look forward to continuing that relationship with them. It also requires a city services agreement. So Squamish Nation does have tax jurisdiction and authority on these lands, but because of the barriers and challenges with getting infrastructure and services, they've signed an agreement with the City of Vancouver. So what that means is water, sewer, fire, all your typical services are provided on the site. So it's no different than the neighboring lands. And when tenants and residents walk on site, they're not going to notice a physical difference in who's providing the services.
So you're recently in the news with a very large transaction. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about, we'll go to OP Trust in a second, but tell us like the Squamish Nation and Enchkai perspective of that transaction that was kind of splashed all over the newspapers. Yeah.
So we really celebrated the news that came out, and it was following a process that we undertook. Westbank was the 50-50 partner when members voted in 2019. They're the development manager of Phase 1. They decided to divest of their interest in the project, and we happily supported OP Trust's decision to step in and take over their ownership interest. And Squamish is 50% owner, that stays the same. Enchkai is the overseer and working closely with the development manager, that stays the same. And the nation ultimately received ownership of phases 3 and 4, 100%.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe we can go over to OP Trust for some perspective. So what first attracted OP Trust to participate in the Sanok project?
Yep, thanks for the question, Scott, and good morning, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here on this esteemed panel and in this room with a lot of our industry peers. Sinnock really has a number of superlatives associated with it. One of the largest non-resource economic partnerships with the First Nation, one of the largest net zero carbon residential projects in Canadian history, and the largest CMHC financing in Canadian history. However, for OP Trust, it goes beyond just these headlines. As fiduciaries of our members' capital, we are entrusted with providing retirement security and plan sustainability. And one of the primary levers we use to deliver on this promise is by generating compelling risk-adjusted returns on our members' capital. So Sinnock was an opportunity that fit this bill. In addition to that, the location that Mindy alluded to and that we can see here in these beautiful images is unparalleled. This location on the Kitsilano waterfront in a market overall, the Metro Vancouver market that was severely supply constrained, allowed us to provide an opportunity for housing and affordable housing at that, which we'll get to in a minute. It also allows us to provide new generation product that enhances the quality and sustainability of our portfolio and helps deliver on that pension promise by providing income for the long term on behalf of our members. As we spoke about earlier, there are a number of ESG components that are quite attractive to us as well, primarily the affordable housing component. As Mindy mentioned, 20% of the units across the project will be designated as affordable rental. Of those units, a subset will be reserved exclusively for Squamish Nation members and provide much needed housing to the community. There's also a very exciting geothermal element, which allows the project to be efficient from an energy perspective and a net zero profile. And then finally, it's always been a focus of OP Trust to invest in the multifamily and industrial property types. We believe them to be defensive in nature with compelling supply-demand fundamentals. And I think the bonus out of all of this and the cherry on top is really being able to work with an aligned and trusted partner such as NCHI and the Squamish Nation.
Thank you for that. That way to support the ongoing development of Sinnock. So can you give us a little bit of insight into the transaction?
Absolutely. I'm sure everyone saw the headlines a couple of months ago. It was all over the news. It's very exciting for us, but I will say first and foremost, our conviction and our investment in this project goes back to 2022. We were attracted to the opportunity, to the partnership, to the vision of the project. And this recent transaction is really a reiteration of the same commitment that we have. The purpose of this transaction was really to streamline the partnership and the governance of the relationship and the JV and reinforce our commitment that we're here. We're committed to Vancouver, we're committed to the Squamish Nation, and we're committed to delivering something very, very exciting for the community and all stakeholders involved. It also allows us to now partner with best-in-class property leasing and development managers, which we're very excited to do. And again, help us create that product that will be something to be proud of for decades to come. I'd also say that this reorganization and this transaction allows the Squamish Nation and NCHI on their behalf to have more autonomy and more oversight and control of this very prominent development on their ancestral lands. So to us at OP Trust, it's a very logical next step in the evolution. We're shoulder to shoulder with our partner, and we're all aligned to deliver something very special.
So I'm sure you've learned a few lessons along the way, and I'm wondering if you can share a couple with our audience who are thinking about this idea of First Nation-led real estate development and not small development, right? Like this is major scale, bringing lots of units to market. Also good to hear the helping with the attainable or affordable housing crisis that we're faced in Vancouver. So what are a couple of those lessons that you can share with the members of our audience?
Absolutely. This is, of course, a very ambitious project. In embarking on something like that, there's many learnings and lessons that come out of the opportunity. I think one of the key lessons here is to the strength of partnerships and having partnerships that are aligned. And what I can say here, especially now after this recent transaction, this is a partnership in the truest sense of the word. This is a partnership where we have shared values with Squamish Nation and Edgecai. We are both focused on community building and creating something that is an asset for the community. We both have strong balance sheets and a conviction and commitment to the project in seeing it through to completion and through to stabilization. We both have a very fluid and strong relationship across the business and operational teams, which makes this journey even easier. And of course, we have alignment. And I would say alignment is, of course, critical in any partnership, but particularly in a project of this complexity and of this ambition, it's even more paramount. So we absolutely enjoy, and it's thrilling for us to work with Anachkai and the Squamish Nation. And Mindy, I hope the feeling is mutual.
Yes, it is.
They even get to share a mic.
That's right. It is a true partnership. And we welcome that. And some of the lessons that we learned, NCHI was created in 2018. The member vote was in 2019 and shovels hit the ground 2021. Very tight timeline. And for Squamish, they invested in NCHI, they invested in setting us up, and they knew that having close collaboration with our development manager and our partners was essential for representing the nation's interest, for navigating the development process, especially on reserve, which many developers might not have experience with. It is unique. What I advise is getting yourselves organized sooner, planning, not building the plane when you're flying it, which is what we did. But we built up our internal resources. And I mentioned Jen because she's built a team now that actually is looking towards more development and working with other partners on our next 350 acres. So the nation knew, with real estate located in Vancouver within our territory, that it's essential for us to get ready and be active partners and participants through the project. So that's what we've built.
And that's a good segue to we're going to go to you, John, in a second. And yeah, and so one of the things, Mindy, that you and I started talking about because of the work that we're doing together for Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh is the need to access capital markets to finance First Nation-led real estate development. So just in the MST portfolio, not including the Squamish Nation portfolio, talking about bringing 20 million square feet of real estate to market in the next 10 to 15 years. Of course, our friends at Mississauga the Credit are going to be busy here with all of you in the room in Toronto, and we're going to hear from Warren about that. But Mindy, before I go to John, maybe you want to talk a little bit about capital needs, and then John will cue you up. And so,
Yes,
Mindy.
thanks, Scott.
Yeah.
Part of the reason we're here, part of the reason we brought in OP Trust, we know we need a lot of capital to get these developments off the ground. Scott mentioned MST. MST Development Corporation is a sister organization to us. They're undertaking major projects as well, located in Vancouver. They aim to deliver over 22,000 units over the next 20 years. It's significant. These are large scale projects. As a First Nation ECDEV, access to capital is one of our key challenges and barriers, and we need billions of dollars to undertake these projects. And CMHC is part of the solution, OP Trust is part of the solution, but we know we need more institutions and investors to work alongside us.
So perfectly queued up for you, John, there. I could have done it better. Oh, yeah, sure.
If I may just add from the OP Trust
Absolutely, yeah.
perspective,
Yes, yes.
you know, we're very excited to be a capital partner, but aside from that, fulfilling that role, we're genuinely excited about this project overall. I think the excitement is evident with seeing all these folks in the room, this turnout bright and early on a Thursday morning. I think the excitement is evident in partnering on this opportunity to build something special. We, I think, view this as a prominent, a marquee project, and it helps fulfill a lot of our responsible investing commitments as well. You know, in the room with us is also Sandra Basella, the head of illiquid assets at OP Trust, and she'll attest to the fact that we are fiduciaries of our members' capital. We want to ensure plan sustainability and retirement security, but we also want to do so in a responsible manner. So with this project, we're proud to support affordable housing in a community that has a very tight vacancy, Vancouver being one of the tightest residential rental markets in all of North America. We're very proud of the geothermal component and the cutting edge technology that will allow this project to be net zero carbon neutral. We're very proud of the Squamish involvement, not just as an investment partner, but also in the construction as well as the operations of this project once it's up and running. The Kitsilano waterfront location is, of course, unparalleled. If I get the opportunity, I'd love to lease one of the units right up top there and relocate to Vancouver. There's a wellness hub pavilion, which will serve as a very key amenity for the residents of this community. And I think the list goes on and on. But this is really a great example of what can happen and what transformative initiatives can be delivered when First Nations, private and institutional capital, and government all come together in lockstep. And of course, financing partners, which is a good segue into John and Scotiabank.
Yeah, so thank you for that. Part of the work that I'm doing right now is to get access to about $5 to $10 billion of capital to help fund the MST work. And so that capital is going to come from here, Bay Street, and it's probably going to come from New York as well. So, okay, I'm going to get it over to you now, John. What do capital markets need to do to get ready for this wonderful future of First Nation-led real estate development? And there you go. There's your softball.
And ULI for organizing this. So it's a great question. And so really picking up on something that Mindy said, we're talking about corporate finance here. You need billions of dollars to do these projects. So think 100 million plus. Once you hit 100 million, you're into corporate finance. A lot of people, when they think about this question, they go straight to balance sheet and they look at, you know, private institutions, or they look at banks to say, how can you lend us this money? And we're seeing a lot more concessionary capital enter the market through the First Nation Finance Authority, who very soon is going to be able to lend to special purpose vehicles that are Indigenous. We're also seeing, Charles is here, the CIB making direct investments too in infrastructure on reserve and around. And then we're seeing the loan guarantees provincially and federally. That's all good stuff moving in the right direction. What it means for the banks is that we're usually going to have a secondary position in a syndicate behind a concessionary capital provider like FNFA. That's pretty straightforward. That's not anything new, and it's just being enhanced. Where I think we're really going to see capital market activity is in debt capital markets. So even if you look at what the FNFA is doing right now with their pooled debentures, they're raising billions of dollars over a long period of time to help augment some of these capital needs. But then if you look at an example like Stone Classic 8 and Enbridge, you know, that was a whole code that brought together a consortia that issued debt to raise capital. What the banks need to do to be a part of this and to really lead it and help fill that capital gap that we're seeing is we really need to make sure that groups like Squamish and Mississaugas of the Credit can issue their own debt. Because once you do that, then you're getting into capital raises that are coming from an Indigenous source using Indigenous assets and oftentimes Indigenous assets on reserve. So if you think about it, How do you do that? Well, you're issuing capital either through a First Nation, or you're issuing debt through a First Nation, or you're issuing debt through a GP/LP structure or a holdco. But what does that really mean? And so we've done it on a smaller scale at the banks, and some of the other banks are catching on more at the commercial level, so less than 100 million. But if you take this distinction and you say, we're talking about real estate development off reserve and fee simple, there's a lot of ways to finance that because the asset is something that is seizable, transferable, attainable, assignable. If we're talking about SNOC and it's on reserve, you've got Section 89 of the Indian Act that's going to prevent that seizure. It's going to prevent any garnishment of that land. And so how do you get the value out of that? And the way I like to look at it is, Mindy, this is phenomenal. SNOC is, I'm keep going, it's not there anymore, but SNOC is phenomenal. But if you think about it, if you have 480 doors on reserve, that's 480 likely revenue streams that are going to come in. And so any financial institution can look at that from a cash flow perspective and recognize that, you know, every level of a leasehold interest on reserve land under the Indian Act, the First Nation Land Management Act, or self-governing agreement, that is generating cash flow that is attainable, that can be leveraged, that can be used to borrow money or issue debt. If you look at the more aggregate perspective and say you've got SNOC, which is this massive development, and the land that it's on and the fixtures that it represents, that now has a value to it that banks, Scotiabank or any bank, can assign a loan to value to. And if you take the leasehold interest, so under the head lease, and take the sublease or the series of subleases for each lot, now you're looking at, okay, how do I pool that debt and that value and issue debt in debt capital markets? So now it's Mindy and Enchkai and Squamish putting the debt instrument out. They're not relying on the FNFA. FNFA is great, but they're not relying on the FNFA. And they're not relying on other partners unless they wanted to through an MST structure. But the debt capital market activity has to increase to really close that capital gap. And that's where banks really need to step up. Because the private credit that's going to come in, it's going to be a good ROI. If you get good real estate on reserve, or if you get good real estate on fee simple lands, that'll, my boss always says, this capital goes where capital grows, right? So you're going to get that naturally. I think where, though, there's a little bit of hesitation still is where you see real estate development on reserve, where people don't understand the systems of leasehold interests that actually ladder up to revenue streams that actually represent something themselves that are seizable outside of Section 89 of the Indian Act. So it's not without risk, Scott, but that's where I see the capital market activity going. And one other thing I'll say, and we've seen one example of it so far, is convertible debentures. You have First Nations investing in publicly traded companies, so you could certainly do it with REITs, like real estate investment trusts, where you're investing, but it could be either the cash or the equity that you're getting in return. So it's capital market activity that we weren't seeing in the market before that are representing these new avenues. But debt capital markets, watch for it. It's going to grow in different ways. And beyond that, let's keep enhancing the concessionary capital so we get lower cost of funds going to communities and going to economic development first.
So I think that's maybe a great segue over to you, Warren, because I'm sure everybody in the audience is waiting to hear what's the MCFN and MCBC approach to this, and what do you have in store for us in what you've taught me now is the Graydon Golden Horseshoe area.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott. I think before I begin, I'd just like to thank ULI, Aaron Burles, for organizing the events, and of course to our many sponsors, and for all of you, including a number of our partners that are in the audience. I appreciate the interest being shown in this subject. But I think it speaks, the number of partners, number of people here, and number of sponsors, I think it speaks to what our goal is in regards to development of urban reserve within the city of Toronto. As you know, the city of Toronto is within the First Nations treaty lands. But I think, the development of an urban reserve within the city not only represents a real estate development, but it also represents economic reconciliation and developing the partnerships and collaboration, as Mindy said, which is necessary for this development to occur. And we appreciate their interest being shown here today.
And can you tell us a little bit some about the projects that you might be working on or what you have in store? What
we looked at in development, and we've been Actually, MCFN's been looking at this since 1993. I don't know if any, most of you know, but I started out as the executive director for the First Nation. I think between 93 and 2000, I graduated from being the EDO to the executive director. But during that time, we were looking at office development within the city of Toronto. We were working with CLC, looking at converting access office space, purchasing access office buildings and converting them to doing the ATR, addition to reserves and developing commercial space within the city. I think there's obvious tax advantages for that development, not only for financial institutions, but for First Nations organizations within the city that would be interested in doing that. So I think we're still interested in doing that, but maybe on a larger scale. And we're also looking at residential development. We did submit an application under CMHC Arbo Phase 1. Unfortunately, we did not win, but that RFP came out in January, I think, and the submissions were due in March. So in that time frame, we were able to put a partnership together with a development company, TAS Developments, and excuse me, Live here today, also with our Arcadis. And Scott Arpel's here today, one of our partners, and ITC Construction. And we were able to put that proposal together in short order. So it was for a 305 unit residential development. So we are looking like at doing that type of development throughout the city, but we are also looking at doing development such as Squamish is doing at Sina.
And maybe one more question, Warren, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. I think we're actually going to have time for that. So what can folks do to partner with MCBC? I know there's lots of people in the room thinking, probably want to get involved in this. How do I do this? Maybe they don't have experience working with First Nations. What advice can you lend them this morning?
Well, I'd like to acknowledge my staff here today, Kayla Anderson, excuse me, Louis Stotts. Louis Stotts and I have been working on First Nation economic development for 30 years, off and on. And William Briscoe, our chief investment officer. William and I were both former members of the board, and I think we've got the same path here. Employment is the development corporation for the Squamish. So, but we've Louis and I are probably here 2 or 3 times a week in the city of Toronto meeting with various partners, and we're very interested in partnering on development. We're William and I currently setting up meetings with trust companies and pension funds, et cetera, to look at how we can finance development. And we have created a number of partnerships. We partnered with TAS on the proposal for, Arbo Phase 1. Also, we've got a limited partnership agreement with Arcadis on design development, and we have various CMs, GC partners that we're in the middle of finalizing, so that we do have the capacity moving forward. But we are very interested in meeting with additional partners.
Great. Well, thank you for that. And one of the things that I'm most excited about in First Nation-led real estate development is the opportunity for nations to work with the federal government, provincial government, and local governments. Mindy talked about this, to deliver a solution to one of the largest crises we're facing in Toronto, Vancouver, and other urban areas across Canada. And that is attainable or affordable housing. Many people are unfortunately locked out of the market currently. And I know a lot of the work that you guys are doing at Enshikai and that we're doing with MST and MST-DC, and hopefully that Mississauga the Credit's going to be leading here in Toronto, is to deliver attainable housing so people can afford to live where they're working and bring that much needed product to market with the added benefit of economic reconciliation, right? Like, these projects will return very significant amounts of money back to the nations, which, we heard from Chief Salt, they couldn't hire lawyers, but there's many policies and laws and a dark history of Canadian history and past that prevented First Nations from meaningfully participating in economic development. And so proud to see Mississauga, the Credits, Squamish, and other nations across Canada taking their rightful place in the economy and leading this development. So it truly is one of those win-win-win scenarios that we should all be running towards and helping bring solutions to that. So I think with that, we probably have a few moments for questions from the audience. So I'm sure there's some burning questions out there. So if there are any, we're happy to now turn to the audience. And I think we have a mic that can be passed around.
Test.
To people in the audience.
Question.
Yeah.
Right over here.
Okay. Bear with us as we pass this along.
Thank you. Mindy, I was wondering if you could speak to the entitlements process for the Synack development. Permitting?
Sorry.
Permitting and entitlements?
Hurry.
I'm actually going to pass it off to my chief development officer.
I was worried she was going to do that.
Well, and Jen, I wonder if it's worth doing just a construction update too.
Sure. Yeah. So in terms of construction for Sanok, as Mindy pointed out, we will be gaining occupancy in the first quarter of next year, with move-ins starting to occur on the first tower, which was at the bottom of your screen, no later than Q2 of next year. So construction on phase 1 is progressing. We'll have occupancy on all 3 buildings by the end of next year, and then we're turning our attention to phase 2. So if you were looking at those images, phase 2 is actually on the east side of the bridge. Phase 2 will deliver another 1,560 homes to the market. So just behind Molson's, or you can see it to the side of the bridge. Overall, between all 4 phases, the project is Sanok will bring 6,000 homes to the Vancouver marketplace. It's built in a way that while it is on 10.5 acres, 6.5 acres of the land will be accessible to everyone in Vancouver. And so we've really built them as being trees within the park and being able to create autonomy in a third space down on the bottom level. Within phase 1 and phase 2, the other component that we're really excited about is the infrastructure investment that we're making. So within the agreements that we have with City of Vancouver, what you will see as you come next year is on either side of the bridge, just between the 2 tall towers, we are going to be building out a transit hub. And that transit hub will allow buses to be able to come up and down the bridge and be able to access Sanok just through driving or stopping right on the bridge and allowing people to move up and down within our property. The thing that's really important about that is that transit hub will then connect people to 2 major transit lines within the Metro Vancouver market. Within 4 minutes to the south, you will be able to access the Broadway Corridor line that we'll be commissioning over the next year and a bit. And within 9 minutes to the north, you'll be connected to Burrard Station and the Central Business District. So that's a major component of everything that we're looking at in construction, is just that clear movement of how we can bring people to and from the site in a multimodal way and in active transportation. So construction on phase 2 will start next year, and we'll continue to progress forward from there. In terms of the land entitlements, some of the things that are unique, as Mindy pointed out, because Squamish isn't a treated nation, we went through a land designation process, which was in 2018. The land designation was delivered to Squamish members and had to have an affirmative vote in order for us to progress. So that really outlined exactly what we intended to build, what the business case was, and also some of the major business terms as to how we were going to do that in terms of partnerships and the types of risks that the nation was and wasn't going to be able to take on. That vote was overwhelmingly successful at over 80% approval from the nation, and that's what we proceeded forward with. Within all of those agreements, we developed a service agreement, as Mindy pointed out, with the City of Vancouver, in that all of our permitting for off-sites comes from the City of Vancouver. All of our permitting on-site is issued by the nation directly. We coordinate between the nation and the City of Vancouver through a CP and an IP. in order to be able to oversee all of that progress. So City of Vancouver coordinates and collaborates alongside us, even with all the work on reserve, but all of our permitting is issued directly from the Squamish Nation and has all of that regulatory oversight. And so that's what gives CMHC the confidence to be able to drive and finance these projects, is it's really no different than financing anything in the City of Vancouver or anything in Burnaby or even in Toronto. And so with that, that's how we've been able to manage that process. And of course, it's all being built to the BC Building Code as well. So that's one of the other misconceptions that I think a lot of people have, is one, that, we have the ability to build anything. It's very similar to a rezoning and a DP process, and that we got our permissions for the site. And then we have the regulatory oversight with every level of government.
And I had mentioned earlier that our land jurisdiction is under the Indian Act. So what the nation did was actually adopt FNCTA, which is provincial, and that's what brings in the BC Building Code.
Okay, I think we got a question over there. Yep.
Just back to the entitlement question, I'm wondering about zoning. Does the nation have its own zoning bylaw on nation lands, or was it necessary to get a rezoning through the city's process?
No, it was under the nation's process.
Hi, good morning. This is for OP Trust and Scotiabank. I guess I'm curious if you talked a little bit about risk-adjusted returns, and certainly there are headwinds in the residential. Getting shovels in the ground is nearly next to difficult right now. But I guess I'm wondering about, current, like if the nation, if MCBC were putting a shovel in the ground today, what are those risk adjusted returns look like? Do your organizations have a KPI or a critical allotment for Indigenous projects, or what does that look like more broadly?
There's a lot of ways to answer that question. It's an excellent question. So based on some of the things, first of all, do we have a pool of money or balance sheet set aside just for Indigenous? No. And the reason is there's too much variation within the projects that you're going to see, whether it's real estate on reserve or otherwise. The risk adjustment is really risk mitigation to make sure that the cost of capital doesn't go up too high, right? Because we don't want to put a term sheet out that nobody wants to see and nobody wants to sign off on, right? That's where really private capital will come in and take the business away from us. So the risk mitigants really come down to some of the things that Mindy's talked about. If we look at a development on reserve, the first question I'm going to ask, is it under the Indian Act, the First Nation Land Management Act, or self-governing? If it's under FNLMA, it's going to be less risky because the interest is more transferable and I can get more value out of that. So the risk adjusted, the risk adjusted margin is going to decrease and be closer to the cost of funds. If it's under the Indian Act, typically it is higher priced. And it's because it's more rigid in a transfer, and it's going to be capped by 49 or 99 years, right? So it's not just the term of the lease, but it's also the nature of the instrument. If it's alienable and it doesn't require ministerial consent, it doesn't require sign off on the band, and it can be held within usually an ECDEV or a limited partner, again, the risk adjustment is going to come down closer to the cost of capital. So this is just a high level example kind of based on SNOC too. We look at a ton of different things. Revenue models are huge in terms of how does own source revenue flow through a nation and how does it stay out of Ottawa? Is the ban on the Indian revenue money order? Are you able to control the funds that you generate from the project and transfer the interest that you have in the land typically? That aside too, that's where we look to bring in different partners where if we can get concessionary capital as part of the capital stack, it's going to put us at ease. Our risk adjudication is going to be more comfortable. Do we have a primary or secondary position? We have to have a primary on the charge to make sure that we get it back, but we can have a secondary position behind a CIB or have a secondary position behind FNFA. If we get a loan guarantee, good night. It's too easy. It's too easy. But the risk adjusted margin has to be one that the covenants are really going to tell the story, and they have to be strong enough so that I or anybody else can convince my global risk management team that this is worth taking in the event of a breach of a covenant or default, when are we actually going to call, right? Or when can we do a sweep? So looking at the revenue that's coming in. So these are all the things that we go through. There's a whole battery of things that are germane specifically to First Nations and First Nation LPs. And so it's not a pool of funds. It's how do we get comfortable with that risk and what reps and warranties do we want to see from the nation or NCHI or the ECDAV to really bring that at risk. I have no interest whatsoever putting out a term sheet that makes the risk completely paid for by the borrower. It's bad business.
So just to add to the question here, so one of the things we've been trying to do in Vancouver, and I think we're starting to do successfully, is roll out what we call attainable housing. So that's delivering units to market at 40% below market prices. So that deals with the problem that you're talking about. Very difficult to get shovels in the ground right now. MST is actually gearing up. We've got shovels in the ground at the Fairmont Heather site, and we're going to be turning to Jericho East and Jericho West very quickly. And these are solutions that need to be brought to bear by all the levels of government. That's why you're hearing Mindy and I continuously repeat, there's a role for the feds, there's a role for the provinces, there's a role for local governments, and there's a role for First Nations. And when you combine that, you can bring a different type of product to market that has a lot less risk and that can move in this very difficult environment. So where other people are slowing down, a lot of these First Nation-led real estate developments are actually speeding up, right? So you just heard the construction update on Sanok, Fairmont, where shovels in the ground. But we're going to need all levels of government to bring some solutions to bear to be able to bring product to market. And so that's really where I think a lot of the innovative conversations has to come. What we're hearing out of the feds right now is they want to see like public-private partnerships. And what I understand that to mean is they want to see, they're prepared to bring funds, but they also want to see private capital and capital coming from the banks investing alongside that. And that's why we're here today. It's to continue that conversation with Bay Street about accessing that private capital so that we can continue to bring products to market and do it in a way that achieves a lot of good social goods, right? Like you heard about the ESG stuff from OP Trust. Like this is delivering attainable housing to folks, right? So that teachers, firefighters, police officers can afford to live in the communities that they work, and we can reattract people. And this work is not going to be done without First Nations in the lead. And that's why we're so proud to host this panel today and to hear from Enshikai and the Squamish Nation and hold our hands up to you guys for all of the really great work that you're doing. So probably have time for one or two more questions. Oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
If I can also comment from an OP Trust perspective, it's a good question. When we look at development, development serves a limited role within our overall portfolio. It serves a role to bring new generation product to market that ultimately enhances the quality, sustainability, and functionality of our overall portfolio. Having said that, to your point, it is a very challenging development environment right now. Just the confluence of land costs, construction costs, and financing costs combined with softening rents don't really make projects pencil out in the current market environment. What's unique about Sanok and projects of this nature is there's what I would call a secret sauce. So for example, financing here is highly attractive in part because of the attributes of this project, such as the affordable housing. What this allows us to do is access very compelling financing on terms that are just a fraction of what conventional market rates would be today. Secondly, the location is unparalleled. We talked about this before, but by partnering with the Squamish Nation and having their ancestral land be available for a development that contributes to the overall community, we're able to access land that I would argue would not be available in all of Vancouver otherwise. And then, of course, when we produce projects of this scale, we're obviously looking to get paid for the risk that we're taking. So to your question, naturally, we'll require and underwrite a higher rate of return on a development project versus, say, a core property and operating asset. So that's just part of our underwriting process. We're very focused on risk management and downside protection. And there are many development opportunities that are brought to our desks in this current environment, but unfortunately, they don't pencil out and we have to decline. But projects like Sanok, which come around only once in a while, those are opportunities we really look to seize and hopefully deliver value for our members and for all stakeholders in the project.
Okay, Chief, I see you've got the mic. Floor is yours.
Yeah, well, I wanted to say I'm very excited about our urban reserve opportunity. And Mindy talked about, her area was unceded. Well, we have, our treaties cover this greater Golden Horseshoe area. And, as Warren said, we've talked about this since the 90s. And, I just wanted to end by saying we were born ready.
Are there any other questions before we wrap? Oh, yeah.
Could I just add on to what the chief said? I think, as part of establishing our capacity to develop within the city of Toronto, we are working with the city, and we appreciate them meeting with us. And we're looking to, build on the experience of other First Nations that have developed urban reserves, and we think that the Squamish are participating with this, and we're looking for the experience of Eric Bearlison development as well. So I think we're well on our way to building that capacity and building those relationships.
Yeah, go ahead, Mindy. Yeah.
I just wanted to extend an invite to welcome you back to Sanok, Chief. Your story, the weather actually this time of year is a little bit tricky, but we would welcome you warmly. Come back to site, see the projects. I'm very excited to hear more about the projects that your nation will be undertaking as well.
And the snowstorm, just so everybody here can get a good laugh, was a centimeter of snow, but we're not very apt in Vancouver at dealing with snow. So that prevented us from going on site and of course visiting you guys, but I'm sure we'll make that happen in the near future. Any final question before we wrap? Okay. Yes. Yeah. Over to you to introduce the counselor. Yeah. Oh. There.
Come on. Am I on? Yes. All right. Well, why don't you come on up, and I won't have much of an introduction other than just to welcome you to help close us out.
I'm gonna pull this back up because that piece of paper.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. What an inspiring morning we've had here today. The conversation and insight shared today shows just how much potential there is when we work together. I'm honored to close out this morning's event with a few reflections. But first, I should probably introduce myself. My name is Jesse Herkimer, and I'm a proud member of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. I have the privilege of serving my community as an elected councillor, where I have the responsibility and oversight of inclusive prosperity, economic growth, and job creation. I also serve as the council representative on the board of MCBC. We covered a lot of important ground this morning. I'd like to thank the chief for the start off in a good way, which grounded us in the importance of treaty, reminding everyone why we are here and the purpose of our work. Scott, as always, led a morning full of laughter, which is hard to do when we all have to get up at 4 a.m, or at least we did. Mindy, you opened our eyes to what is the possibilities of working with First Nation-led development. Umar and Jonathan, you shared strong insight of why investors and markets are now paying attention. Warren, as always, he has a whip that he likes to crack from time to time, day to day. He tries to say that it's my wife, but it's really he's showing you how MCBC is leading the way within Toronto. Here on Bay Street, we're coming. I'd like to offer a heartfelt miigwech to Richard and the team at ULI for hosting us here today and creating this space. We're here to speak about treaty forward approach to development. It's about honoring our treaties and working together in true partnerships with respect for the land and one another to build a future where opportunities and prosperity are shared by all and where everyone moves forward in a good way. Miigwech.
That brings us to the end of our session. I say miigwech as well to you, Councillor and Chief Salt. I think to use the vernacular of our time, there's times you feel like we're in hinge moments, and I think this morning felt like a hinge moment that we'll remember. I think the future of real estate in our city in the GTA, inspired by what's happening in Vancouver and other metros in Canada, for that matter, is going to look very different. I'm excited by Scott, some of what you're saying about the opportunities to fill a need that hasn't been filled for decades, and I think there's a real huge opportunity for us all to partner more and more. And we're just so proud as ULI to be a small part of that partnership. Once again, thank you to Aaron Barlis for hosting this very, very important conversation on Bay Street, and to all our panelists again, thank you. So we'll see you hopefully very soon. More conversations, you can guarantee we'll be happy to convene. So thank you.